How's it going, everybody? Gaurav Bhatt and Mihir Vasavra here. You're listening to the Express Sports Podcast, and it's game time. Today, we will be talking about two individuals in two entirely different scenarios, but who have prompted conversations and who have prompted reality checks into wider issues. We will be talking about Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai, who seemingly has gone missing after accusing a top Chinese politician of sexual assault. But first, Azeem Rafiq. Former Yorkshire cricketer Rafiq is at the centre of England's racism scandal. And on Tuesday, he gave disturbing details from his playing days to a tribunal. The 30-year-old spinner, he alleged ill treatment and bias because of his roots, and he had filed a case against the Yorkshire Cricket Club. His emotional outburst is part of the document published for public record on the UK Parliamentary Committee's website. And before we even get into the conversation, the situation, let's hear some of what Rafiq had to say in his testimony.
For the first time, I started to see for what it was. Felt isolated, humiliated at times, constant use of the word packy. In 2017 pre-season tour, we were in a place and Gary Balance walks over and goes, "Why are you talking to him? You know he's a packy." Or he's not a sheikh, he's got no oil. And this happened in front of teammates. It happened in front of coaching staff. We were on a bus trip in London to Surrey game, and we went past a couple of men with beard, and it was like, "Oh, is that your dad?" If we go past a corner shop, or does your uncle own this? And this happened in front of, again, Martin Moxon, Andrew Gale, club officials, and it would never got stamped out. Everyone saw it. But because the institution and the environment, it becomes such a norm in there that I don't think anyone thought there was anything wrong with it. And that's probably why some people don't even remember it.
Mihir, it breaks the heart, all these findings and the names that he has mentioned, the entire testimony. I don't know about you, but it always seems so scandalizing and so shocking and so, heartbreaking. But at the same time, the whole issue, when you think about it, it's hardly surprising, right? We've always heard undertones. Not even undertones. We've heard explicit accounts of these abuses and these situations. And especially this Azeem Rafiq situation has been going on for some time, right? He had made this public before.
It is extremely heartbreaking, Gaurav. And just to give some context here, so Azeem Rafiq is a 30-year-old off-spinner who was born in Karachi and moved to England in 2001. And he was the captain of the under-19 England team, which had Joe Root, Ben Stokes, Josh Butler, and all those players. So we are not talking about a fringe player over here. We're talking about someone who would have had a bright future. And he was an integral part of Yorkshire team. I mean, from 2008 to 2014, he was in the Yorkshire team, and he was the first player of Asian heritage to captain that team. But when suddenly now it looks like it's sudden, but of course it's festered for almost a decade. Decades is zyada actually ho gaya abhi what Azeem Rafiq has been facing, but he's spoken up in the last year or so about this. And it was in an interview to Wisden where he made this allegation of being a victim of racial abuse. I mean, of course, Gaurav, we'll be going into the details of this, but it is kind of a wider commentary on society, Abhi, I guess, what's happening in county cricket, especially with Yorkshire and Azeem Rafiq's case. This is an ongoing conversation in so many parts of the world. India, maybe we had this incident of racial abuse in the IPL, which, it didn't really explode into something as big as this. But the accusations made by Azeem Rafiq and the kind of statements that were hurled at him, those are truly, truly shocking.
Absolutely, and also shocking is the list of characters and names that Rafiq brought up, and he is fighting this fight against some of the more prominent names of England cricket, including that of former captain Michael Vaughan. Now, Rafiq says during a match, former England captain Vaughan told 4 Asian cricketers, "There are too many of you lot. We need to do something about it." Now, Vaughan, of course, has denied these claims. Rafiq responded in his hearing that he may not remember it because it doesn't mean anything to him, but 3 of the 4 Asian players he mentioned do remember it. He then used his platform, which is a newspaper column, to discredit me. He seems to have taken the same stance as the club. Deny, deny, deny. Also included in this list are England cricketers, top batters, Gary Ballance. Now, the former England batter has admitted of calling Ballance Paki. However, he claims it was, in banter. Rafiq said Gary would regularly make belittling or derogatory comments about my Pakistani heritage, like don't talk to him, he's a Paki, or why are you talking to him, he's a Paki. It became unbearable. In fact, at the PCA Awards in 2014, Rafiq says that Gary insulted him in front of other friends, other members, and they almost came to blows before an agent separated them and asked Azim to calm down. Alex Hales, another top England cricketer, he's still in the scheme of things. Rafiq says that the name Kevin was used as a derogatory term for players of colour, and this phenomena was first introduced by Ballance. Hales is a close friend of Ballance, and he even named his dog Kevin, which, the implications were right there for everybody to see. Legendary cricket commentator David Lloyd, and this one's especially disappointing. Well, all of them are disappointing, but David Lloyd, after Azim Rafiq had made all his experiences public, after he had been talking about this issue, Lloyd messaged members of media saying, a clubhouse is the lifeblood of a club and Asian players don't go in there. Now, he has apologized for his comments, but Sky, the broadcaster for whom Lloyd works, they have opened investigations into these allegations. उसके अलावा भी यार आप कितने भी नाम देख लें, सारे इंग्लैंड प्लेयर्स, यू रिमेंबर 2005 में जो द ग्रेट एशेज सीरीज जहां पे मैथ्यू हॉगार्ड ब्रोक आउट एज दिस ग्रेट स्टार, ही यूज्ड टू कॉल रफीक एज राफा द काफिर. Now, Rafiq says that initially he didn't necessarily know what he was trying to say, but after a while he realized that it's a derogatory term and he's using it, of course, in a bullying manner. Tim Bresnan काफी ज्यादा ऐसे बोलते थे, and Andrew Gale, who was a former Yorkshire captain and coach, he has been suspended for a historic tweet, and he also used to partake in all these name callings and all these insults. Now, the current England Test captain Joe Root, Rafiq has called Root a good man whom he has never heard of making any racist comments. However, the all-rounder said that the fact Root doesn't remember racist language being used reveals how normalized it is. Now, he said Joe Root is a good man. He never engaged in any such language, but Rooty was Balance's flatmate and was involved in those social nights out where I was called a Paki. He might not remember, but it shows how normal it was that even for a good man like him, he doesn't see for what it is. Mihir, we heard the testimony and we have been reading about it. But even now, me just saying all these remarks and all these experiences and you listening them and we talking about it on our podcast, it's very heavy stuff, yeah. And I guess kudos to Rafiq for fighting it and for making his experiences public. He broke down a couple of times in his testimony when he was talking about newborn child who passed away, and there was that period of bereavement, but uske bavjood mein in the dressing room everybody was like, you're not talking to the coach, you're not talking to the captain, and this is not done and everything. Whereas the other players who had undergone unfortunate circumstances and experiences, unke liye the club was always open and very reciprocative और काफी ज्यादा वहां पे अच्छा माहौल था. तो ये सब तो यार काफी क्लियर कट समझ ही आ रहा है. एंड आई गेस इट्स नॉट जस्ट लिमिटेड टू द यॉर्कशायर क्रिकेट क्लब, इज इट?
नहीं यार गौरव, एंड इसमें द मोस्ट फ्रस्ट्रेटिंग पार्ट इज लाइक राफिक yesterday he also mentioned in his testimony, I think it was in reference to Michael Vaughan, शायद इन्हें पता नहीं चलता है कि वो क्या कर रहे हैं, and in their mind it is all cool and banter, and they don't even realize the kind of impact it has on others. I remember my first trip to England in 2010. पहली इवनिंग थी मेरी वहां पर. I'd gone to a pub which was close to my hotel, and वहां पर सबसे पहले the first interaction I had with the local over there was जहां पर मैं बैठा हुआ था. Someone walked over to me and he just randomly out of nowhere, a stranger comes to me and asks, "Are you a Paki?" And that was my first trip abroad, first trip to UK. I'm sure people who live there, South Asians who live there, people who have been there even fleetingly for work, for leisure, they will have their experiences as well. So point being कि थोड़ा सा common place है ये जो racism which it is sold as banter, it is out there. And the usage of word Paki, I think, काफी frequent or काफी in some cases, like Rafiq says, कि ignorance में भी काफी time कह देते हैं. My grouse is not about ignorance में कोई कह देता है. My problem is when someone like Rafiq comes in, the way it is handled, right? I mean, in this case, the Yorkshire Cricket Club, they have completely washed their hands off this whole thing. उन्होंने पहले कहा कि they have had an independent inquiry, then whatever investigation they had, it was far from acceptable, and which is why the government there had to step in. And now it is at a situation where the county can't host international matches. A lot of their administrators have quit or been forced to quit. And there is a further inquiry and the scrutiny of the entire wider cricketing as well as the wider world on them right now. And it is, again, heartbreaking. I think it will be right time to perhaps also plug in what Indian players, like Rafiq mentioned, Cheteshwar Pujara's example, what they had to face while Pujara was in Yorkshire.
Well, look, Steve, once I left the club, Cheteshwar Pujara joined the club. And Jack Brooks, I think, started it where he didn't feel the need to call him by his first name. There is an interview with Cheteshwar where he said, I'd prefer them not to. But not only did Jack, the coaches, everyone else, the media, Yorkshire Post, the Yorkshire website, the Yorkshire Twitter page, everyone called him that. Commentators around the world, some high-profile people. It just shows, again, back to what the institutional failings and what that environment showed people and how they could behave. So that was a Steve point.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, like you heard, Pujara being called Steve might not look like a big deal on the face of it, but there is a subtle or perhaps more in-your-face racism there, which I guess Pujara for some reason never left कर दिया है, but I think Rafiq ने आके इसे direct address किया हुआ है. Again, it's not restricted to cricket. I mean, last year, Gaurav, we had done a story, hockey को लेकर, जहाँ पर the basic situation of South Asians who try to get into hockey in Britain is so dire that it has got Indians and Pakistanis to unite and form their own club in Birmingham. The club is called Barford Tigers, and since 1966, they have been playing hockey in Birmingham. They've been playing the local leagues in Britain, the national leagues over there. They've been doing decently. ऐसा नहीं कहूँगा कि वो लोग dominate कर रहे हैं England hockey scene. They're decent enough. But for all these years, they've been trying to shatter stereotypes. वो लोग discrimination fight करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. And they're trying to ensure higher representation of the British Asian minorities in the hockey teams, as well as the big hockey clubs in UK. And that still hasn't happened. You hardly see British Asians in British Olympic teams. I mean, we hardly remember that when Britain won the gold medal at the 1988 Olympics, the hockey gold in 1988, they had a couple of players, one born in Jalandhar, another player who had a Pakistani ancestry, who were a part of that team. And now when you look at it, there's absolutely no one. It's also the case in football, जहाँ पर आप एक नाम यहाँ वहाँ देख लेते हो जो साउथ एशियन हो, but largely South Asians एक stereotype बन गई है कि ये क्रिकेट ही खेलेंगे, इसलिए इन्हें फुटबॉल आता नहीं है, and जो क्रिकेट खेलने जाते हैं उन्हें मतलब होता है what Rafiq is facing.
Very true, yeah. And, when we're talking about lifeblood and whatnot, I guess South Asians are the lifeblood of the entire England, not just the country, but the economy. So, काफी ज्यादा disparaging है. Plus also, Yorkshire is not just some random club, yeah. And this is also not their first brush with South Asian cricketers, talented South Asian cricketers. Pujara ka you mentioned. Rafiq, of course, 2001 mein he moved, he came over from Karachi and then he started playing there. But in 1992, well, Sachin Tendulkar was their first ever overseas signee. And that was, I remember it being such a huge deal where we would follow the reports and follow the county season because of Sachin Tendulkar's exploits on the field there. So it's not like कोई नया upstart है और जो they need to get their culture in order. In that context, it is especially disappointing. Moving on, Mihir, the second story that we will be talking about on this podcast. What do you make of this entire Peng Shuai situation here? I mentioned in the intro that how this talented Chinese tennis player, she accused Chinese politician of sexual assault. After that, the post, it was a post on social media, Weibo or Weibo, however it's pronounced, it's the Chinese equivalent of Twitter. It was deleted very soon thereafter. The searches for her name, Peng Shuai, were blocked. The searches for tennis itself were blocked for some time, and she has not been heard of since then. No other posts have been seen since 2nd November. So it's been more than 2 weeks, and now the global tennis fraternity has woken up and they are asking, where is Peng Shuai? It's such a bizarre situation, Mihir, but again, not one which is especially surprising.
यार इसमें cast of characters इतना जबरदस्त है कि the moment this news broke, me and another journalist friend of mine, we were half joking of something like this happening, and it's just scary that it actually is happening. But I mean, the allegations that Peng Shuai has made, she's made it against a very powerful Chinese individual, Zhang Gaoli. I think that's how the name is pronounced. But he is no ordinary man. He's 75 years old. He's a member of the Communist Party's 7-person Politburo Standing Committee. And Gaurav, that means that he is one of Xi Jinping's most trusted allies. I mean, when you then see what has been happening ever since the allegations have surfaced, like you mentioned, I mean, someone had written in one of those news reports that you practically type tennis and Weibo and it yields no results. So it's censored to that level. And no one knows what's happening to her. Naomi Osaka has expressed concerns. I think a few others have come up. WTA too has spoken up, Gaurav. It gets your attention because generally we don't see tennis bodies, generally sports federations, to make a statement on situations like these, especially when it's China. And we'll come to the China part later. But we've seen, like you mentioned, I think it was the Zverev incident where the ATP took forever to come up with a statement. But WTA has kind of prompt over here.
Absolutely, yeah, and that was certainly refreshing. Before that, like you mentioned, he's a big fish, yeah, Zhang Gaoli. He was part of that Politburo for 6 years, from 2012 to 2017, meaning he was essentially one of the 7 most powerful men in China. And he retired as vice premier in 2018. Before we move on to WTA's statement and everything, just a bit about the accusations and the allegations. Basically, there were screenshots of Shuai's post on Weibo, where she detailed this incident 3 years ago, and Zhang invited Shuai to play tennis with him and his wife, and then sexually assaulted her in his house. And she mentioned that she had never consented, and she was crying all the way. And she had a consensual relationship with Zhang before, but having said that, she could not produce any evidence to substantiate her accusation. This she mentions in her post. And after that, like you said, nothing has been heard from Shuai, who has won Wimbledon and French Open doubles titles. And she was the first Chinese player, even before Lina, to top the world rankings in 2014. Now, she is a great player. She hasn't actually retired, though she hasn't played since early 2020, if I'm not wrong. She is one of those फ्रेंच प्लेयर्स यार, WTA एंड मैं ये नहीं कहना चाहता कि WTA को ऐसा बोलने का जरूरत नहीं था. अगेन विल बी कमेंडिंग देम ऑन व्हाट दे सेड एंड हाउ दे सेड इट, बट जस्ट द फैक्ट कि ऐसा हो रहा था. दिस इज अ चाइनीज टेनिस प्लेयर हु इज ऑलमोस्ट अ फ्रेंच टेनिस प्लेयर जिनका ग्रेट प्लेइंग डेज आर बिहाइंड हर. शी इज एक्यूजिंग दिस एब्सोल्यूट हॉट शॉट इन चाइनीज पॉलिटिक्स. So WTA could have easily well left this, shouldered their arms a little. But what they in fact did was, the WTA chief Steve Simon, he said that the organization has received confirmation from several sources, including the Chinese Tennis Association, that she is safe. She's not under any physical threat. But isse hi wo khush nahi hue yaar. They're saying ki all our sources, all our resources, everybody on the tour, Chinese players, Chinese umpires, we have mobilized everybody, but nobody has been able to make direct contact with Peng Shuai. So the question remains कि यार face value पे ले नहीं सकते अगर कोई कह रहा है कि she is safe and she's not under any physical threats. Steve Simon basically says कि we need China to be investigating into these allegations. And one of the more powerful phrases from his statement was that Peng Shuai and all women deserve to be heard, not censored. Her accusation about the conduct of a former Chinese leader involving a sexual assault must be treated with the utmost seriousness. And obviously, she displayed tremendous courage going public. अभी WTA of course is the women's tennis tour. ATP is the worldwide top tier tennis tour for men. They also said in a statement on Monday that it was encouraged by the recent assurances received by WTA that Peng is safe and accounted for, and we will continue to monitor the situation closely. We stand in full support of WTA's call for a full, fair, transparent investigation. अब यहाँ से दो बड़े टॉकिंग पॉइंट्स निकलते हैं. एक तो हमें बात करना चाहिए कि यार रिपरकशंस क्या होंगे अगर WTA is issuing such a hard call against China and the Chinese Tennis Association कि यार आप इन्वेस्टिगेशन करें. बट उससे भी पहले मिहिर तुमने हल्का सा इस पे हिंट किया ही है. बट ATP who were so slow in launching an investigation into the domestic abuse allegations against one of the great upcoming tennis stars. upcoming भी बोलना अब गलत होगा. He is the Olympic champion. He is making Grand Slam finals. Alexander Zverev, जब Zverev के खिलाफ allegations उठे थे by a former junior player Olga Sharipova, she accused the world number 4 of physical and emotional abuse. These claims were rejected by Zverev. Then Olga's claims were published in a story by an online magazine Slate in August 2020. और उसमें उन्होंने काफी कुछ बताया था, पूरा सब्सटैंशिएट किया था उन्होंने, और विटनेस अकाउंट्स भी बताए थे कौन कौन लोग इसमें इन्वॉल्व थे. Zverev launched his own legal proceedings and it took until October 2021 for ATP to finally launch an investigation against this great poster boy, this great star who's making all these finals and who's making all this money. And that's what I mean when I say कि यार important player के खिलाफ तुम लोग मतलब इतना जल्दी नहीं कर सकते, तो French player का तो और भी मुश्किल था. So hats off to WTA.
A quick message before we carry on to the rest of the show. After Gaurav and Mihir finished recording this segment, the Chinese state media released an email allegedly written by Peng Shuai to the WTA. In this letter, she says that she is resting at her home and she is safe. She also says that the allegations of sexual abuse against the Chinese officials were not verified by her, and she requested that this issue be put to rest. However, the WTA and the tennis fraternity have not entirely accepted this email, and they say that the email only raises more concerns about her safety and that they have pressed to find her whereabouts.
Secondly, Mihir, China is so important in WTA's larger scheme of things यार. इन्होंने 2018 में एक 10 साल का डील किया था for Shenzhen to be hosting their World Tour Finals, जो ईयर एंड एक एनुअल इवेंट होता है जहां पे टॉप प्लेयर्स, टॉप सिंगल्स प्लेयर, टॉप डबल्स प्लेयर्स जाते हैं. 10 साल चाइना में होने थे. एंड दिस वाज the biggest ever deal struck in women's sport. This eclipsed WTA's own 6-year, $88 million title sponsorship agreement with Sony Ericsson in 2005. ये वाला $1 billion का डील था. 11 तो वहां पे ATP के टूर्नामेंट्स होते हैं, बड़े बड़े इवेंट्स वहां पे. टैलेंट काफी ज्यादा निकल के आ रहा है. Most of it is thanks to Li Na and her exploits on the court. Grand Slam winner, of course, but काफी ज्यादा is because of all these tournaments and the grassroots movement that is being led in participation with both WTA और China Tennis. तो अब for WTA to say कि यार आप लोग इन्वेस्टिगेशन करा लो ये वो, मेरे हमने प्रीवियसली देखा है कि मेसत ओजिल हो या चाहे NBA स्टार हो, अगर कोई हल्का सा भी चाइना की किसी भी चीज के बारे में रेफरेंस भी करता है या हल्का सा भी नेगेटिव टोन में बोलता है, तो वो लीग्स तो खैर दबा ही देती है अपने प्लेयर्स को. बट चाइना उससे पहले सारा जर्सी, सारा उनका नाम का एनी रिकॉर्ड्स ऑन देयर इंटरनेट, सब कुछ पहले ही गायब हो जाता है. ऐसा हम पहले नहीं देखा. इनफैक्ट शेयर फैक्ट कि यू एंड द जर्नलिस्ट फ्रेंड ऑफ योर्स जिसके साथ में आप कॉन्वर्सेशन कर रहे थे, वो रिपरकशंस हमें भी पहले ही पता होते हैं हमेशा कि यार एक चाइनीज टेनिस प्लेयर एंड accusing this great Chinese politician, shit, it's not going to go down easily. So yeah, hasn't that always been the sort of general reaction that we associate with China and all these quote unquote controversies?
I think उस पे हमें I think एक एपिसोड अलग से करना चाहिए. आई थिंक इट डिजर्व्स एन एपिसोड बाय इटसेल्फ. बट इट इज ट्रू यार. आई मीन अनफॉर्चुनेटली द स्वे दैट चाइना हैज, द इन्फ्लुएंस इट हैज ऑन वर्ल्ड स्पोर्ट राइट नाउ, उसकी वजह से काफी सारे इश्यूज जो है, जो बड़े इश्यूज है, जैसे पेंग शुआई का इश्यू अभी जो हो रहा है. वी हर्ड अ लॉट अबाउट the controversies surrounding the Winter Olympics that Beijing will be hosting in less than 100 days now, जहाँ पर उइगर मुस्लिम्स के ट्रीटमेंट को लेकर बड़ा मुद्दा बनाया जा रहा है. एंड again, a lot of allegations that have been made against the International Olympic Committee vis-a-vis that controversy वो यही है कि IOC का majority पैसे जो है that is coming from China, and how do they bite the hand that feeds them? It's similar in so many other sports. Football ले लो, already you've mentioned tennis, and hence it is brave, also very courageous on WTA's part to take such a quick and hard stand against whatever is happening. I mean, for all you know, she might be safe. वो शायद उसके घर पे बैठ के she might be with her family. But for all you know, it might not be the case. So until we know what's happening exactly on ground in China, people need to put that pressure, and that is happening. And in a way, it's good that WTA की तरफ से आ रहा है, so that you have a body and not a set of individuals who are asking for something like this. It'll be interesting to see how long this plays out, and whether players, officials, federations will have the energy to fight against the strong Chinese system. But like I said, I think if we don't have anything interesting to talk about next week, we should talk China sports. I think it's a great topic to talk.
Let's launch our own investigation into or maybe it's not the correct thing to say, but so like mentioned in the intro, two important individuals and two very important conversations that they have struck, and two reality checks for the sports, the organizing committees, and even the countries to take into account. Also, two very heavy topics for us here. In the coming days, ISL season is starting. We still haven't discussed Australia's great maiden World T20 title. But all these topics will be on the agenda board in the coming weeks. Aaj ke liye itna hi. On that note, let's wrap it up. Stay tuned to the Express Sports podcast for Game Time every Saturday. But more importantly, stay safe. Adios.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.